I cast my net into the sea, will you haul it in alongside me? Will you share the feast in the morning sun? Will you be my friend, my brother drum?
The idea for the song Brother Drum came when I came back from the USA. In 96 to 97, I trained with San Jose Taiko, and I returned to the UK afterwards because my ambition was then to help get Taiko started in this country. And in May 98, the Emperor of Japan paid a state visit to the country, and there were protests during his visit from war veterans who were objecting to the lack of an apology from the Japanese for what happened in prisoner of war camps. Up to 30% of British soldiers who were locked up by the Japanese died in captivity, which is an appalling record. I was greatly struck by that, but I'd also spent 2 years with San Jose Taiko in California learning about the experience of Japanese Americans who had also been interred during the war. And there may not have been the same casualty rate, but there was discrimination against them after the war, which continues to this day. What was clear was that the chains of the past were still shackling us, and people nowadays were still talking about what happened during the war. And it seemed to me that it was still only a part story, because the prison camps, whether they were Japanese or the internment camps in the States, were only part of the story. There were also the atom bombs, there was the firestorm created over Tokyo, there were all kinds of atrocities. But here were the British soldiers on the side of the winners, you might say, demanding an apology from the losers. And that apology might be due, but apologies can be made all round, because in war atrocities are committed by both sides, and everybody needs to apologise, everybody needs to acknowledge the pain that there was and then move on. So the history is there, and it's a painful history for all parties. Everyone suffered during the war, but rather than demand retribution from each other, I think maybe what we should be doing is reaching out to each other and creating new bonds of friendship across cultural boundaries, across geographies. And that's something positive that we can do today, rather than look for score settling about the past. So why play Brother Drum now? Because in many ways it might seem like an old song dating from last century, about things that happened in the last century. Well, earlier this year, my son Oliver played a joint performance with Shogo Yoshi in London, and it was a three-handed show. They needed repertoire to fill the programme, and Shogo said to Oliver, "Is there anything that you can bring to the party?"
My name is Shogo Yoshi. I'm a professional Japanese traditional music. I play the Taiko drum and the Japanese flute and a kind of violin kokyu. At first, I invite him to do the small gig in London, and he suggested one song. It was Brother Drum. That was so beautiful for me. The melody also so beautiful, and he told me some historical things of the Brother Drum. I totally impressed and felt good, very good. So just I'd like to join this project.
When Shogo mentioned doing this show, and I suggested Brother Drum as a component of it, I sort of explained the premise of it, the concept to him, and he kind of, I think about 2 or 3 sentences in, really understood why it was important specifically that, say, he and I played it, because of the cultural links between us, the common bond of Taiko, and then also the cultural differences as well. And we had a kind of a connection about it, which was really nice, and I think made the whole process a lot easier.
Musically, the idea of Brother Drum was to have some quintessentially English sounds, English tunes, and then also to bring in some Japanese instruments as well. So the beginning starts with some chords that sound perhaps a little bit stately, almost Tudor-like in their construction. And then we have instrumentation coming in the form of the Japanese flute and the shamisen, bringing a distinctly Japanese flavour to it as well.
It's been an interesting challenge because before you were learning it for the first time, so you had a lot to learn, whereas this time, the drum duet that we're doing in one part of the piece, Shogo wrote it and then I arrived and had to learn it. So it was kind of nice this time being on the back foot and Shogo saying, here you go, play this, and me being like, okay, I'm having to work it out. But still involved in the same piece, still brother drum, but this time Shogo teaching me something instead of me teaching him.
It's also great to be working with George Whitfield and Damien Clark again. George and Damien were members of Press Gang when I was a member of the group back in the 80s and 90s, and they joined me when we first put Brother Drum together in San Jose Repertory Theatre in 98, and when we toured it in the UK in 99 as well.
I'm going to play the dulcimer on Brother Drum today, but I'm also going to play this baby, which is the hurdy-gurdy, which is a very strange medieval instrument. So I'm sort of bringing two early instruments to the mix, but again with a sort of Anglo feel that will complement the Japanese melodies and sounds from the Japanese instruments.
The original Brother Drum, I think the original idea was trying to bring two cultures together, and the idea of English folk meeting with Japanese taiko, these two traditions crossing over, is very exciting for people like me and Damien. That's exactly the kind of thing we like to get involved with. And so 20 years on, to again get the phone call from Jonathan saying, oh, there's a chance to collaborate with some Japanese musicians and the taiko drumming, it's something that I certainly would leap at every time.
We're also joined by Hibiki Ichikawa, who is the UK's only professional shamisen player.
I'm Hibiki Ichikawa. I play Japanese instrument called tsugaru shamisen. So this instrument was from Aomori Prefecture, which is the northern part of Japan. So actually in Japan, there are three types of shamisen. This is the biggest one. So I'm using also big plectrum called bachi. Yeah. So I'm hitting the body hitting things, and also using index finger, ring finger, plucking sounds at the same time, like that. When I was in Japan, playing this Japanese folk music, but since I moved to England, I could meet a lot of people. So it is like a fit of the song. So it's crossover the Western music and Japanese folk music. It is important for me.
Something that's changed since I first wrote the song is that it's gone from being an aspiration to something that I've actually done over the last 18 years as a professional taiko player. In 97, 98, it was an expression of an intention to reach out to people. But over the last 18 years, Kagemusha Taiko has been involved in lots of arts projects and community exchanges with people in Japan and elsewhere in the world. And so it's not really just an expression of intention, it's a reflection of something we've actually done, and I feel more confident about the song as a result of that. So what next for Brother Drum? What's the plan? Well, this is the plan come to fruition, you might say, because for me it's been great to honour the song properly now by gathering this great collection of musicians together, musicians and friends, to record it and to do the job properly in a way that we weren't able to do back in 98 or the early days. And so we hope people like the song. That's really all it's about.